Welcome to Scars to Stars, where conversations and personal stories let us know we are not alone. In this show, you will meet authors and speakers from our books and events as they share vulnerable personal stories to spread hope and inspire you through adversities in your own life. The world is a difficult place. You will find like-minded people here with kind hearts and supportive souls. I am your host, Dina Brown Mitchell. I am a suicide survivor and the founder of the Realize Foundation. I am so glad you are here. Let's dig into this meaningful conversation. Hi, everybody. It's Dina at the Realize Foundation. And I have another special guest here today. His name is John. And he is an author, he's an executive coach, and he's a keynote speaker. And he also focuses on neurobiology of communication, like for leadership and things like that. And he's worked with NASA and Google and Johnson & Johnson, et cetera, I'm sure. So welcome. We're so glad to have you here, John. I can't wait to hear your story.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, Deanna.
Awesome. I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. So, just to give people a little bit of context, I'll tell a quick story, and then I'll, share another little bit that's kind of right in line with what you talk about here.
All right.
So I've always been the guy with the soft skills, and I always worked with a lot of people who had the hard skills, and I was always jealous of them because they made more money than I did. They seemed better than I was. They called what I did fluffy because I had the soft skills, like the speaking and the relationships and business development and all that. And I was always in the .com world. And I was always a founder or a co-founder or an early stage employee at the companies that I worked with. And I raised several $100 million in Silicon Valley and beyond. But the people that I worked with, who on some level I was paying, called what I did fluffy. So I was, go around trying to prove I was valuable while I secretly didn't think I was valuable, and it was just awkward. And then in 2009, I went to the TED conference and I saw person after person give the most unbelievable talks I'd ever seen. And I remember realizing two things. One was, wow, that's powerful. Call it fluffy if you will, but that's powerful. So I got, for the first time in my life, really, an insight into the value of what I brought, the public speaking and all that. But then at the very same time, I realized, gee, even though I've always thought I was some kind of phenomenal public speaker, the reason I thought that is because all those conferences I was the best speaker at, or one of the best speakers, they were tech conferences. So like I was the best of the worst. So I came back and I got really involved in the TED and TEDx community. And at one of the first ever TEDx events, I was on the team putting it on. And we had this guy who had all the hard skills in the world, was the one I was waiting for, the most exciting topic. And when he got up on stage and started to speak, everybody in the room checked out because he was so nervous and awkward. We all thought we were going to throw up. And I remember first being really sad because he was what I was looking for the whole day. That's what I was looking forward to. And then I got kind of mad because I thought about what that must have cost my companies and to have people like him. And we definitely did. And then the evil part of me came out and I was like, hard skills guys blowing it, calls what I do fluffy, neener. And as I was doing that, my buddy came over and he leaned down and he said, dude, we got to do something to help people like this. And that is the moment that changed my whole life and led me to do what I do now. And what I did differently because of that moment is I created a training that I now get to do all over the world. I'm going to talk about it. It wasn't like it was overnight. But I created that training and I based it all in human evolutionary biology and human neurophysiology. So I could show people not only what works when it comes to communicating with and inspiring and motivating humans, but also why it works based in science. So that's what I do. And that has been heavily influenced by some of the tough times that I've gone through. And the first really, really big, awakening moment that I had was in, I had raised, it was the .com days. It was October 20th, 2000. And I was one of 4 co-founders at a company called bigwords.com. And we had raised over $80 million in investment. And on October 20th, 2000, our investors came in and they said to us, okay, guys, look, you've done a good job. You've asked us, everything we've asked you to do, you've done well. You didn't overspend on marketing. You grew market share. You did all these things really well, but we don't think you can be profitable soon enough or fast enough. And the market has changed significantly. So we don't think we can get you to profitability. So we're going to pull the plug now. And I had put my entire identity into that company. So it was the only thing that I cared about at that point. Like I had put my soul on the line and I had said that publicly for that company. And now we were out of business. And so a little bit later that day, we ended up across the street at this, pub in downtown San Francisco, drinking beer and crying. And then I proceeded to almost die of an autoimmune disease, some strange version of Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which was brought on by the lack of sleep because I hadn't slept more than 4 or 5 hours for years doing, creating that company. And then the stress of one day being on top of the world, thinking we were doing a great job being one of the leading .com companies. And then the next day we were out of business and I didn't get to say goodbye to anyone. I didn't get to apologize to people. I didn't get to thank them. I didn't get to send a farewell email. They just locked the doors, shut down the servers. Nobody knew what happened. We never got to tell people anything or any kind of closure. And now I'm sitting in the emergency room at University of San Francisco. And I've got a line out the door of doctors who want to see me and poke me and prod me and see what's happening because what I've got is so rare and they've never seen it before. And my doctors that are attending to me are looking at me like they're scared. Like every time I catch their eyes, they give me this really not good look. And so I really thought that I might not walk out of there. And what happens with Stevens-Johnson syndrome is that you start to get you get canker sores and lesions in all of your mucous membrane, which is extremely painful. And, in my eyelids, in my mouth, everywhere that there's mucous membrane was just getting these canker sores. And then you start to get dots on your skin. And then those dots connect, your skin sloughs off, you go blind and die in the burn unit. And that's what was, everybody was worried was going to happen to me. And so as I was sitting there thinking that I might not walk out, I had a conversation with what I call the big is, right? The universe, the beingness of the universe. Because, I'm not super religious, but I do believe there's something. And I looked back over my life and realized that, I had been nice enough, but my life had been really small and selfish. And I didn't want that to be my legacy. I didn't want it to be over. And so I said to the universe there, sitting there thinking I might not walk out, look, if you let me walk out of here and you let me keep living, I promise that from now on, my number one goal is going to be to make a difference and everything else will be secondary to that. And as you can see, I got to walk out and I have been quite faithful in keeping that promise. Like I really focus on how can I make a difference, and I do my best to make that my number one priority in everything that I do. And so I was not okay for a long time. Like it took me a while to make it back from that experience physically. And, like not everything was perfect after that, but because I have really focused on making a difference on some level, every day since then's been gravy, because like I got a second chance at life, and it made me really, really clear on wanting to make a difference. And when it came to the business that I'm now doing, which, was a while after that, it wasn't till 2009, 2010 that I really found what I'm doing now. But one of the things that kept me going, because when I started this company that I'm doing now, I had been kind of in the woods, it felt like, and I'd been not making very much money, and I'd been working for too many stock options and not enough cash. And I was deeply in debt, and had just gotten married and was really in love with my wife and wanted to provide her with a great life. And I lost the job that I had at the time. And I just didn't know what else to do. And I tried to find other jobs, but I couldn't find them. And so finally I decided I was going to do what I'm doing now. And at first I called it, I was really thinking speaker coach. And so I talked to some of my friends about being a speaker coach, and they said, well, you don't want to do that. Like speaker coaches are a dime a dozen and you'll never make any money. And that's a terrible idea. So for a couple of weeks, I cried about it. But then I realized, like, look, this is the only thing that I know I can make a difference with. Like I've seen when I work with people, the transformation that they get, especially people who are really logical and who are maybe nervous about public speaking. And when I work with them and I teach them these things and they understand these things, they just get a lot more freed up and they have a lot of fun and they're way more successful. So I knew I was making a difference and I knew I was providing value. So I just decided to do it anyway. Like, who cares about the money? I'm just going to do what makes a difference. And for the first year, I went further in debt, and I was already over 50 grand in debt. Then the second year, I kind of almost broke even. And then the third year, I made more than I ever made in my whole life before. And then I doubled that plus the next year. And then I tripled that plus the next year. And what I realized in hindsight is that because of that promise to make a difference, I stayed really focused on how can I provide value. And I didn't let the fact that other people thought I would never make money at this, like that would have been something that would have taken me out of doing it before, because like I wanted to make money. But when I was focused not on making money, but focused on making a difference, it didn't happen immediately, but that's when I started making more money than I ever made, when I was focused on making money. And then, there's one more piece of the puzzle that kind of gets us up to today, because today I am just even more grateful and even more committed to being here and to making a difference, because at the very, very end of 2022, I hurt my shoulder and I needed a shoulder surgery for a rotator cuff repair. And so I had that rotator cuff surgery. And I went back to the doctor about a week later and I said, gosh, a week or 10 days. And I said, it feels weird. It feels like it's infected. And the doctor's assistant looked at me and said, oh, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And then more than a month later, I went back to the doctor because I couldn't lift my arm higher than like this because it was so infected. And then so they immediately put me on multiple antibiotics into a vein that led out into my heart. They did a debridement surgery where they dug out all of the infection they could and washed it and washed it. And then my dad died a week later. We found out my mom had dementia, much worse than we knew. The infection came back. I had another debridement surgery. Then the infection came back again, and I didn't know if I was going to live or die. And we had another surgery, and I just lost my mind. And for almost a year, I was just completely unable to function. I couldn't work. I could barely be around people. I didn't want to listen to music. I didn't want to watch TV. Nothing that gave me joy anymore. And it turns out that, took me almost a year to figure this out, but it turns out that, and I don't know why none of my doctors told me this, but I finally found a woman who had worked at the VA hospital who helped me figure this stuff out, almost a year in. It turns out that serious infections are highly correlated with clinical depression. And I didn't understand clinical depression. I didn't know what that actually meant. Now I do. And the antibiotics that I was on have a less common, but not rare side effect of clinical anxiety. And so I was pegging the scales on clinical depression and clinical anxiety. And there's a thing called akathisia, and you can read about it at missd.co because it's missed so often. So missd.co, and it's called akathisia, and it's a bad reaction to coming onto or going off of a medication where you can't stop your mind from just racing and racing and racing, and you can't sit still. In fact, akathisia is the Greek word for can't sit still. And so I had all three of those things going on. And one of the most, helpful moments to me was when we just figured out what was going on, because I had no idea. And, I had been very seriously entertaining thoughts of just ending it all. And I think the main reason I didn't is because I had at the time a 7-year-old, and I kept reminding myself, even though it looked like we might lose the house, and even though I couldn't work and we were burning through our savings and everything seemed to be falling down around my ears, I kept reminding myself the only thing I could do that would be worse to my son than what's happening right now would be if I killed myself. So I didn't. And when I met this woman, Natalie, who worked at the VA, that was one of the first things she said to me. She's like, look, don't kill yourself because you're going to be better. You will be okay again. And I did not believe that. I did not think that was ever, ever, ever going to be possible. But after a while, like knowing what was going on helped a lot. And then I toughed it out for a little while. And then finally, we just decided to get me off the antibiotics a little bit earlier than the doctors wanted me to. They were all like, look, you're probably fine, but like, we would like you to stay on for another 6 months. And I was like, I can't do this for 6 months. So I just got off. And within 2 weeks, I was better, and I was back, to myself. And I never thought that would happen. So, that gets us to today. So, that was all of 2023. 2024 was a very dry year for me. And I spent the whole time just trying to get the momentum back in my business. And now 2025, that's starting to happen again. But all of it just makes me more grateful for every day and for every breath. And I'm really, really glad that I made that commitment a long time ago to have making a difference be my number one driver, because that's gotten me through other tough things and has really had a huge impact on my career and my focus. So I'd say that is my story.
Thank you for sharing that. I have to
You're
tell you
welcome.
that we have another person that's been on this podcast and written in our books that has Stephen Johnson's.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it happens. And
Mhm.
I didn't realize it, but when I tell that story, I've had people come up to me and say things like, wow, you're lucky. My grandma died of Stevens Johnson, or, I had a cousin who died of Stevens Johnson. I think part of the problem is it's so hard to recognize, and people don't think of it because it's not very common. And they're, like just taking an aspirin can make it worse. Like it could be a reaction to the painkillers that you're taking that brings on Stevens Johnson, and then it hurts like crazy. So people take more painkillers and that makes it worse. It's a weird one.
I don't
Uh,
think I knew that part, but TJ West, if you guys want to look it up, and I think he was in volume 2 of our book, and he's been on
uh-huh.
the podcast, and he was a baby and was really sick, and he was diagnosed with it. Back then, he's been legally blind his whole life.
Oh, wow. I'm so sorry.
So
Wow.
he's been trying to get a surgery that isn't working out, and so he's actually in the process of getting some kind of special um, like lenses for his eyes.
Mm,
I can't even remember what you call them that you put in your eye.
uh-huh.
um,
But
and
something that could help.
contacts,
Uh-huh.
and so they're trying to make him some special ones that will help him. But I don't know. We
Yeah.
keep praying that it's going to work. So
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck to him.
yeah. But I want to talk about the other part you talked about that said, well, first of all, if the person you first told you thought your shoulder was infected would have listened to you. Hi there, it's Dina. If you like our podcast and you're enjoying learning about other people's stories of overcoming adversity, please go over to therealizefoundation.org and support us by donating. We believe that conversations, community, and personal story can change lives and reduce suicide ideation. And we also have a way, if you have a business, you can support us without money out of your pocket. So go on over to realizefoundation.org and look at the donate page, and you can learn how to support us as a business, and also you can donate any amount. Thank you so much.
So that's the first mistake that I made is he said, oh, you'll be fine. And like, I just went, okay, right. No. I knew there was something wrong. Like that was me not honoring myself. And I know better, but sometimes I still do it. Like if I would have said something like, okay, well, will you write down in your notes that I think it's infected? And you told me, don't worry about it, you'll be okay. I think he would have looked again. I think we would have gotten a different outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes there are people who see something every day, and they don't experience it themselves. So maybe it's
Yeah.
different,
Yeah. I mean, and like I don't think it's fair for me to make him wrong. I do a little bit, but like what you're saying, dude, he sees this every day in and out, in and out, in and out. I'm the one who's having my experience. I'm the only one that really knows what's going on in here. So I should have taken responsibility for going deeper.
Yeah, but the other side of the coin is that we go to medical people because they know more than we do.
Right, exactly. Yes. Well, I mean, but nobody knows more than you do about your lived experience, right? Which is the thing I forgot
Mm-hmm.
in that instance.
Well, I think it's thank you for that website because I want to look that up, because anxiety and depression are two things I've lived my whole life with, and I don't
Mm,
I've never taken meds or anything like that, but
yeah.
I didn't even really understand it until I was older. Um,
Yeah.
And so just for people to be able to explain to the people who love them what's
Yeah.
going on, sometimes that's really hard.
Oh, it was almost impossible for me. Like people just didn't get it, right? And it was, and I mean, I think, you know, it just wasn't something I'd experienced before, and nobody around me had experienced me going through that. And I didn't have a lot of friends who had any experience with that themselves, and I just didn't get it, you know? And so I think that to be able to somehow explain that to the people around you, it's a difficult challenge.
Mhm. It really is. I think that's part of why we do this, because
Yeah.
I think people get to a dark place where they think no one understands or nobody cares,
Yeah.
and it's hard for them to put into words what they're dealing with,
Yeah.
and then they just don't ask for help and they don't speak up, and then it's too late.
Yeah. 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 Boy, I mean, I never knew till I knew, you know. It's
Mhm.
one of those things. I really didn't get it till I experienced it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I have a whole, like, it opened my eyes, you know. And I think it's one of those things, you know, um it's hard to understand until you experience it, you know. Like I mean, I'm not going to necessarily advocate taking mushrooms, but you can't understand what it's like to take mushrooms till you take mushrooms. You know,
Mhm.
same thing, you know, like it's just it it but I do think that it is I have a lot more room and compassion and understanding, right? Because if people don't know what this is like, if they don't know what depression and anxiety are like they don't want to deal with it. Like it's not in their reality and it's inconvenient and they don't know what to do. And, you know, there's all kinds of reasons that people would back away and people did, you know, in my world. And, but boy, I get it. And,
Yeah.
you know, like I am definitely an advocate for compassion and understanding versus like this is inconvenient and why don't you just get over it, right? Because like everybody was like, oh John, meditate. I'm like, okay, I did, you know. It
Mhm.
didn't help. And you know, like I did everything and it just didn't help. And I did, you know, like it's worth trying,
Yeah.
but if it doesn't help, it also doesn't help, you know. Like and people were not very happy with that answer.
Yeah, I think that you're like, I've been really sick for over a year from,
Hmm.
I think, from mold.
Yeah.
And, I had three different people I was working with. One was a chiropractor, one was a alternative health doctor, and one was my primary care doctor. And
Hmm.
they didn't, I mean, obviously they don't all believe the same things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I was listening to all of them to figure out what I thought, you know?
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that I was so frustrated about is that I was having pneumonia like every month. I couldn't breathe. I
Yeah.
was having low oxygen. I was
Ugh.
in the emergency room like a lot of times. And one of them was doing a blood test. It said I had all these sensitivities or allergies to all this food that I'd never had before.
Uh-huh. Right.
And so I was like, well, I don't even know what to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my primary care does a blood test and he says, you're not allergic to anything. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't understand what's going on here. I
Yeah.
am,
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm getting very sick. And when and the more this went on, there were certain things I ate that I knew made me feel bad.
Yeah.
So I was just really perplexed about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they put me on a new inhaler, which is really helping me. But that still doesn't tell me what caused it, what I should stay
Yeah.
away from. Like it's really confusing. Like
Yeah.
how do you deal with these things? And I've interviewed a lot of people that have different kinds of health issues that have similar confusion.
Right. Well, I mean, it's an incredibly complex system. And I think that there are a lot of good actors out there who genuinely mean well and have great things to say. And then there are enough bad actors who just are trying to make a buck and like are willing to be unethical, that it, and it's on both sides, right? It's like it's naturopaths and MDs and everybody in between. And I think most people are good, but I think that the way that we get our information tends to amplify stuff that's controversial or bad or whatever, which puts a lot more bad actors in front of us. And I think that, you noticing what doesn't work for you, like your lived experience. If you eat that food and it makes you feel bad, don't eat that food anymore. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the most useful pieces. And then whatever else you're getting from whatever other inputs you trust, same thing applies, right? Like if what they're telling you helps, great. And if what they're telling you doesn't help, well, then maybe it's not helping,
Yeah, it's true. It's hard to know. And I also think it's not only the advice and the people who know certain things, it's what has changed in our world in
Yeah.
the way of what's in our food, what's in our water.
Yeah.
All of those things are very
Yeah.
responsible for some of this too.
Have you ever heard of a singer named Jesse Wells? I actually have his shirt on right now.
I don't know.
Jesse Wells. Well, I highly recommend him.
Okay.
And he's got some songs like he's actually got a song, and I think it's called Fat. Yeah, I'm not sure, but like it's where it really he's like the Bob Dylan or the Arlo Guthrie of our day, I think. And he writes about current things that are going on, and he's got a really great perspective. And I don't, he's not going to give anybody medical advice, but he's got some songs that I think point towards the deeper problem and at least could make you feel better because at least somebody's singing about it, and he's got phenomenal lyrics. But if you just go to YouTube and search Jesse Wells, and then, I recommend the song Red. I recommend the song The Poor. I think it's called Fat or Food or whatever. I also recommend his song Bugs. Pretty much anything he does, but start with those. And then there's another great one called God, Abraham, and Xanax.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes if people can find it.
yeah. I think that, art and music, at least it can help us with our human experience, right?
It helps with creativity and maybe laughter sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Because I
Yeah.
mean, there is science behind laughter and how it heals your body. Like it's
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, laughter. I mean, I'm old enough to remember Reader's Digest, and they had a whole section called Laughter is the Best Medicine.
Mhm.
And I think that there's great truth to that.
Yeah.
And it's hard, right? Like when you're all depressed and anxious, how do you go laugh, right? But if you can find something that can make you laugh,
Mhm.
that can be tremendously healing.
Yeah. I think you're right. And you can even go on YouTube and say, I want to see something funny, and it'll give you something
Yeah.
funny. It might not be your choice of funny, but
Yeah.
there's
Well,
so
I'm
much
a
now.
there's so much. And there's a guy named Craig Shoemaker I highly recommend. He's actually, I think, a couples therapist now. That's kind of funny, right? Going from being a well-known comedian to being a couples therapist, but he's a scream. Uh, Craig Shoemaker. Yeah, you can just go to YouTube and say, I want to see comedy. And you can probably even put in the kinds and types of comedy you want. I want clean comedy. I want
Yeah.
whatever relationship comedy. I want, whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, that's funny. Or it could just be like, this is totally off the wall and random, but when we first moved to this house a year ago, we were planting a garden, and we put a birdhouse out there, and
Mm-hmm.
we put it too close to the fence. So the squirrels kept getting in the birdhouse, and they were gnawing on the wood birdhouse until it was pretty much destroyed, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I was on the Zoom with somebody, and we were talking about this, and they said, Dina, you have to go watch these videos on YouTube about squirrels. And I was like, okay. Then he gave me the links, and it was this guy who had created like a
I've
ninja
seen
course
that.
in his
Yes.
backyard for squirrels.
Yeah. And it's phenomenal.
So if you want to laugh, that's a good one. It's
That is a really good one.
and I sent it to my dad, and my dad's answer was, "This guy has nothing to do."
I do kind of wonder how he finds time to do that stuff, but
But it
when
was
you
like,
get enough views on YouTube, I guess that can pay for it, right?
yeah, yeah. But it was the same premise of what we were dealing with, why he did it. So it
Yeah.
was it was very funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was off topic, but makes
But
us
hey, it's funny. If you need a laugh, go find that guy.
well, you could just look, like, search for Ninja Warrior squirrels or something, and you'll find it.
Yeah,
It's hilarious.
it's
And
really
there's
funny.
like 3 or 4 videos on it.
And they're all amazing. And the guy's pretty funny. I will give him that.
Yeah,
He definitely is quite funny.
that was hilarious. Well, I don't know what to talk about after that.
Well, I mean, I think that there's, it makes me think about the fact that life's, you know, life's definitely too short, but life is a long song and there are ups and downs. And I remember when I was young, my dad said to me, son, be good to the people that you meet on your way up because they're the same people you're going to see on your way down. And then you're going to see them on your way up again, and so just be good to people
Yeah.
because life goes through all these permutations and you will never regret being good to people. And so I love that. And I also love like, I think the takeaway from my story is that it's worth it to just keep going. Like I made a promise to myself when I was young, and this shows you I was singing in a rock band and whatever, but like I promised myself that if I was ever going to actually kill myself, I would the only way that I would let myself do that is by going to India and going up in an airplane skydiving and taking some acid before I did it. And then if I really wanted to kill myself, as I jumped out of the plane, I wouldn't pull the chute, right?
Wow.
Because I figured that if I went through all the stuff to get to that place, if I still wanted to kill myself, well, then maybe I should. But like probably somewhere along there, I would like bump into something that would be worth living for, right?
Yeah. I think
And yeah, I mean, and I just think like you're guaranteed you're going to go one day. So why not just hang in there? Because who knows? Like, I really never thought I was going to be okay again. I really, really, really did not believe that I would ever be okay again. And I was, and here I am, and things can get better. They can also get worse, but they can get better,
I agree with you. There's been several times in my life I felt the same way. I acted on it once.
Yeah.
And once I saw how devastated my loved ones were, I was like,
Yeah.
nope, that will never be an option for me again.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing is in that moment, people are just in pain and they want it to stop.
Yeah.
And they don't think of anything else. And they're not doing it to hurt anybody. They're doing it to stop their own pain. And so I think that's another thing is that people who lose loved ones to suicide don't understand how they could do that, or sometimes they think it's their fault, and that's not true at all.
No.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're still here, because otherwise you and I would not be having this conversation and the podcast wouldn't exist. And,
That's true. That's very true. I mean, it was 30 years ago, so it was a long time ago, but I
think of all the things that happened in those 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the real reason this all exists is because of a friend I lost in 2018.
Yeah.
And I think it made me face my own trauma that I hadn't dealt with.
Yeah.
But it also just made me feel like I needed to speak up and do something. So here we are.
Here we are. Well, congratulations to you. And thank you for speaking up and doing something.
Thank you for being here and telling your story.
You're very welcome. I really hope that it makes a difference for someone. That's why I tell that story, because I hope somebody hears it and gets something that they can use out of it.
Absolutely. I feel like every podcast and every chapter does exactly that for somebody. And it's a way that people can listen or read in private and be able to connect with somebody that knows what they're going through. And that's the whole purpose. How do we let people know it's okay to talk about this? And it's okay. For 23 years, I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think
that's what helps is talking about it, I think.
Exactly.
Sorry,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, we something I say all the time is conversations save lives.
Yeah.
Because if you don't talk about it, there's no way to get help.
Yeah.
And even if you talk to one person who understands, it could save your life.
Yep. That's absolutely right.
Thank you again for being here.
You're very welcome.
I'm so happy you joined us for this conversation. My wish is that you found comfort and hope in your own unique situation. If you resonated with our message, please head over to therealizefoundation.org, where you can apply to write your own story in one of our books. You can also download our 60 Ideas for Self-Care on the resources page. I can't wait to hear from you. Until next time, you are not alone, you are worthy, and you are enough.